and welcome to the show On the Spot. My name is Patrick Kamara. Now, the road to 2026 general election is on, and leaders will be crisscrossing the country and different constituencies trying to convince Ugandans to give them the mandate to lead. A lot is at stake. One leader has come out to begin a platform for civic engagement called Democratic Alliance. What does that mean? This and much more is on the show tonight. Welcome to the show once again. My guest this evening is a member of parliament representing Mpuuga constituency, former leader of opposition, a man with the gift of the gab, the Honorable Mpuuga. Thank you so much for joining us. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Patrick. Thank you for having me.
It's always a pleasure for us to have you, and we are honored that you also honored our invitation. And the last time I checked, you had created a platform called the Democratic Alliance. Honorable Matthias, what is this Democratic Alliance? What do you want to do with it?
Well, your preamble said it all. It's a civic platform. And the reason why over time we've been fighting for civic space is to have this expressive environment where citizens can engage, even agree to disengage on matters of governance, on matters of this country, legal, political, the economy, and otherwise. So the DA is a civic platform that we would like to utilize to engage the citizenry, to engage political and non-political actors on matters relating to governance in this country. And myself and a few colleagues said we needed to do something about the void. You have been in this public space, Patrick, for a while. You must be in some form of surprise that a few months to an electoral cycle, like you have observed, there's hardly a movement from, of course, the ruling party is content with what they're doing, and they have no reason to mend what's not broken in their view. But in the same breath, groups that are supposed to undertake serious steps to see a better turn over the next election in terms of outcome and in terms of positing better, tidings, is also mute. So this, for me, is very compelling. In my humble position and space, I have been formally and informally engaging colleagues, individuals, and groups.
The last time I checked,
Honorable
Matthias Mpuuga, until almost just a year ago, you are leader of opposition, of currently Uganda's leading opposition group. They have some sort of a platform or a movement called the People Power, of young men and women who are ready to engage, people who want to change Uganda. Why do you have to start another? Yet there is something that has already some traction, something that has attracted many young men and women, something that has a high name recognition. Why start another?
Problem, Patrick, with politics in trying to influence public opinion, there's no space for crumb work. What you did yesterday and worked may not work tomorrow. And therefore, increasing this space is a space that must be filled by people that are able to engage, to change things. You have seen groups lose power. You have seen parties cede power over mistakes of the yesteryears, unable to move and change the way they do things. The People Power movement is a movement of 4 or 5 years ago, and it evolved into a political party. And when the actors on top of the People Power movement moved into a political party, The others that came from different platforms, retreated in their small cocoons, and everyone retreated to do what they know better. And that, in a way, played to sort of kill the motivation around which Unity was formed, because then, as NUP, I had a duty to promote NUP, and whoever made a retreat into their closets, their small cocoons and shells, it was not my business, was my business. Therefore, there's no replication.
Sake, looking horns against the National Unity Platform, are you actually in a collusion cause? Do you know what you're up against? Because in this place, especially here in Buganda region, National Unity Platform is such a humongous movement, you know, that if you want to swim against it, you will drown.
So I actually don't know what you're trying to say here. I'm speaking about Uganda. And for me, Uganda is bigger than anything else. And the mirror I'm holding sees Uganda. You're seeing NUP in that mirror. That's a huge mistake. I want you to understand me, and this is not to compete with anyone, but to invite everybody to see the bigger picture. And once the bigger picture is understood without contradiction, then competition is healthy. Then everyone will have space to go and express their views, sell their ideas in a free marketplace of ideas. That's what I'm up to.
You know,
so
when Honorable Mpuuga, when we posted you to let Ugandans know that you're coming on this show, it created some kind of conversation, negative and positive. One young lady, Judith Atwine, actually said, in her words, if I can quote her verbatim, that Honorable Mpuuga is a deceitful man. Your image has suffered. You have been battered, Honorable Mpuuga. So if you have not been believed from the small area of where you come from in this region, even though you're thinking about Buganda, you have first to take a step. The Chinese ever saying, a journey of 1,000 miles beginning with a step. How are you going to take that step here in Buganda when you have such negativity around you?
And that's the danger where political commentators, SC journalists, if you post my presence here and it attracts a response, it must necessarily do.
Negative as well?
Well, it should be. And you see, I respect people who have an alternative view to mine. And I have no respect for people who simply have a personal view of me, not an issues view of me. And if you have anybody that wants to compare themselves, my person and theirs, to impeach my character as opposed to theirs, bring them here for a show so that we can exchange on matters of character and personal probity. But for anybody to hold their phone because they have charged it and they have data to try and impress it upon the world that they know me, it's fraud. And you know, for me, you cannot put me in your court of fraud because you have a social media handle. I know social media. I have a fair understanding of the nature of actors. Negativity per se should never deter anybody from, as long as they believe in what they want to put across, do it. Humanity has two sides. One side is negative.
I now believe that Honorable Mpuuga, you're a man with a thick skin, considering what has been thrown at you over the last couple of months.
And why do you think this is being thrown at me and is not being thrown at people that have robbed, murdered, maimed, caused disappearance, but onto me? Have you ever fathomed that? Have you ever thought through that? That's not thrown at people that have been in the public media for robbing this country, for stripping assets of this nation, for causing people disappearances, for murder, for planting bombs in the city. You are not surprised? And those apologists of those characters? So that's why, for me, when I see you using a pseudonym on social media, you don't even have courage to state where you are and who you are. I don't give a damn. Do you have a census? Do you have data? Do you have a poll of people who believe and listen to me, disagree with me is absolutely okay. In fact, it's from those principal disagreements that we become better. I agree and I appreciate positive criticism. I have a lot of cold feelings for pseudos who want to posit that they can impeach my character and then say nothing about the issues I raise.
Let's get back into this democratic alliance that you have.
That's a better conversation.
Yeah, in your space. What do you want to do with it? Democratic Alliance, okay, you want to create vibrancy among Ugandans, a vibrant citizenry that understand their roles and responsibility, but also you should know that Ugandans have some kind of a voter apathy, they're kind of tired, they haven't seen changes they desire. How do you create that energy and momentum from Ugandans who seem to be reluctant because they say we have pushed enough but no change is coming?
And you yourself shocked by the cold political environment in which you find ourselves. I'll tell you, Patrick, that this country is an angry country. A lot of injustice has been visited on the citizenry over the years. The leaders have let down the people. So the led are angry. Those who are supposed to bring change should not simply be angry, but they must be able to sit down with their anger, tone it down, reflect deeply with some level of imagination, and think through the possibilities. And when you think through the possibilities, you're not talking about delivering the impossible. What seems impossible should with some degree of imagination be possible, because I don't believe in it's not possible. Look, we simply have made two simple propositions to say that through this humble platform, we can speak to colleagues across formal political platforms, civil society, political and non-political actors, on the issue of wide-ranging political and electoral reforms. Because part of the apathy you're talking about has been occasioned by the fact that the voter is not respected. Secondly, that some of our, that's part of our legal regime that puts up this election is skewed against those who want to see change. It's not because I am actually bringing something very new. Some of the proposals I'm regurgitating have been debated in public spaces. But the issue is, have we given them enough gravitas to attract, to compel? Because the whole idea of causing change is not about one being magnanimous. Have we pushed hard enough? How
will you be able, Honorable Mpuuga, to offer that kind of leadership, well knowing that just a couple of months back, people who know you better trust you less?
Who are those people?
People you worked with, the National Unity Platform.
Well, I have not only worked with NUP people. I've worked with a whole...
Yeah, but I'm giving just a group of people where you are leader of opposition, those whom I presume know you better, but they trust you less.
Patrick, your view of Uganda is so narrow.
I'm only talking about the people you've worked with.
Certainly. And
you've been in a collusion course with your party president.
Do you have a census of NUP who disagree with me? Or when you see a few individuals speaking in every microphone, then you mean you're speaking for NUP? I think I have a deep understanding of that platform, and I have a fair understanding of how people rather breathe, view, and think differently, and how they have been cowed into not saying anything. And for me, that's also a problem. But I don't want you to draw me into a discussion about NUP on this platform. If you want that conversation, bring somebody from NUP with me here, and then we can talk about NUP. I am here to speak about the possibilities. So I don't think it's fair for me to be drawn into an NUP disagreement with the president. I have disagreed with so many people. I have disagreed with you and several others. So a disagreement with the Honorable Kyagulanyi is not a national crisis.
Are you a bitter man?
Bitter about what?
You have given all to a party. You have sacrificed. You are one of the founder members, only to find yourself probably not respected like you should have.
I am of course mortified by the insipid form of response to the very serious national issues that I raise as a leader, because you cannot withdraw a platform from me that I hold nationally because I have the national microphone. So if you want to have a debate with me over these issues, then you're welcome. But if you think that you should instead focus on me and all the issues, then you are timid. So
isn't it going to be very difficult for you in your Democratic Alliance agenda to completely divorce yourself from the problems and the disagreements that you've had from NUP? Because I suppose in every place that you go, they'll be asking you what happened with the principal.
Patrick.
And yet, probably that's not even your agenda. But the question will keep coming, Honorable Mpuuga.
And when it arises, I'll speak to the nature of disagreements that are principled, because I have disagreed with so many people on so many occasions, and I am willing to hold a conversation on principled disagreements because I know how to disagree. But about this nation, we shall speak to people. No, and I don't speak to friends. I'm not talking about a conversation with friends. I'm talking about a conversation even with people. I would rather on any day not speak to. But because there's one country called Uganda to save, I'll speak to whoever wants to listen. That's when I said that I'll even speak to the people in NRM. Some of you people, including these studios, misrepresented what I said. To say, Mpuuga said he's going to cooperate with NRM. I know some English. I know the difference between cooperation and then reaching out. Are they the same?
So now talking about speaking in NRM, I suppose you are a patriotic Ugandan. If President Yoweri Museveni today called you and is asking you to work with him, for heaven's sake, for the betterment of Uganda, our motherland, Honorable Mpuuga, would you join him?
And because you've been overruled for 40 years, you believe the Ugandan equation equals General Museveni. I am above that and beyond that. I'm not looking for a job. Come on.
I'm talking about for the sake of our country. If you think there's value that you can add,
you mean for the
sake? If you're convinced that there's value that you can add, would you join and change from within?
That's the danger when people are ruled for 40 years. I don't know how old you are, but I'm very sure that General Museveni has ruled you for 3/4 of your age or even more, or even your entire life. I don't think that way. It's not about working with him. It's bigger than that. Okay, and I do not share his political DNA. I am not looking for a job. I am looking for a conversation because the departure of General Museveni is not a straight conversation. He's a human. He will go. Listen, Patrick, please. Let me make this point. The NRM, the armed NRM and the civic NRM in power for 40 years will go. The issue is, must we, the political actors, allow them to collapse on this nation? You all know so well, I'm very sure you know a bit of our history as Africa, and you know how long regimes, longevity collapses on nations, collapses on economies, collapses dreams. The conversation I'm inviting from all and sundry to have an idea on how to speak to the worries, how to speak to the fears of a regime tired and in the departure lounge to avert a collapse on us. I'm not talking about joining them. That's a conversation of the weak. That's a conversation of the timid.
The regime you say is on the departure lounge is so much around. In fact, many have said it was on the departure lounge. Before we know it, it is here for 40 years. But how do you intend to use the Democratic Alliance to create a group of people who are competent to have higher civic engagement, well knowing that in this country it's hard for people to coalesce, it's hard for people to assemble, it's hard for people to have a meeting, express themselves outside a confined area like this? How do you intend to do that? Because you know they're going to come to you like an avalanche.
Well, Patrick, I'm alive to all this because I've been through it. And I did not make any propositions oblivious of the environment I'm facing. And you see, I'm not here to propose an event. The DA is not making any proposals for an event. It's going to be protracted. And it's not the first attempt by change-seeking forces to try and do something that can work. We have had attempts before and failed. We know what occasioned some of those failures. And we are trying to revisit the possibility.
There are families right now that are hurting, families that have their loved ones incarcerated in places that are not known. And I remember when you are leader of opposition, you are at the far front of trying to look for Ugandans who have disappeared in broad daylight, including the famous name of John Bosco Kibalama. People like those, young people are going to be, wait a minute, our colleagues have disappeared? Are we going to have another platform that will even make other Ugandans disappear? Do you realize the fear that is among Ugandans?
Patrick, that's why if you did listen to me at the beginning, I spoke to the fact that it's very dangerous for anybody to get carried away with the next election. Because for anyone trying to invite Ugandans to simply prepare for the next election without any assurances that the next election will not even be worse than the last, without any commitment from stakeholders that there is commitment to peace, that probably the wrongs of the past can be averted, but you simply speak about it because you have a microphone, that you're ready for the next election. It is pretentious, it is grandstanding, and the families we are talking about will even hurt more if we try to pretend to tell them that we are ready for the next election. And I'm saying, please, before you speak about the next election, can we compel a national-wide, a stakeholder-wide conversation about the problems we encountered, about the problem of domination, about the problem of gunmanship, impunity, that visits us every time we have an electoral cycle, so that we don't simply get ourselves ready for position. Positional politics is problematic.
So how do you intend to have that national conversation when we seem to have a group of extremists on different sides and are not ready to engage?
That's why I said, Patrick, that a conversation protracted will get some people to listen. Because when the led are very angry and justifiably so, the leaders need to tone down on the anger and act differently. When the leaders resemble the led, then you have a crisis. The leaders need to see better. That's why, for me, grandstanding must cease. And we speak to the worries we have as leaders, and also invite the led to participate in the demands. I'm not saying that we're going to beg, but to raise a voice so that everybody listens. Even the most adamant will listen if we speak with one voice. But when some platforms say we're ready for the next election, when actually are in deceit, that defeats the whole idea of saying, look, we have gone through this hell over the last so many electoral cycles. Nobody should be excited about the next election. Would love to have regular, free and fair election. That's the essence of holding elections. That election must posit a better country, that must offer promise of better Uganda, that the mistakes of the yesteryears should not be repeated, because repeating them poses us fools, that we are unable to learn from the past mistakes, and therefore, whatever we talk about, can we talk about what we missed? Then somebody will say, no, you cannot talk about it. So who should talk about it? So for me, I'm ready to face criticism, but speak about the truth. I don't have no space for grandstanding. I know what I've been on over the last so many years. I've been at this, and therefore I'll speak to it. I'll be consistent. With the time, people will listen. I know it takes long for some people to listen and understand. And then some other people, for their own reasons, selfishly, would rather say they're not interested. Then even those who do not want to listen. So I want us to be in a big tent and even speak about what we disagree upon as the opposition, without necessarily undermining each other and our own individual views of how this country should be run.
What I have seen, Honorable Mpuuga, in this country and in recent months, the power of a persuasive argument is being eclipsed by the power of the loudest argument.
And how are that?
and that's a reality.
And has our situation changed because of a loud argument? Have we changed much because of being loud?
Because you have not been able to groom young men and women. You have reached a level of national political leadership to groom people who can actually listen to the power of the most persuasive argument.
I contend that a nation for you to build an enduring constitutional order, you need both horses and bears. And you cannot build a nation with only horses, whereas the bears are slow. They are consistent. The horses are fast and firm and hard, but sometimes they can even crumble what has been built. So you need both. So we need these two to meet at the center and speak to each other's strength. That's the only way you can build a durable constitutional order.
A couple of days ago, the Chief of Defense Forces of Uganda, General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, tweeted, like in his most Twitter storms, your image, and said, look at him. This man is presidential material as opposed to the other. When General Muhoozi tweets in support of your leadership, does it help you?
Was it the first time he's doing that? He did that some years back on Dr. Besigye. He did the same on old Mao. If he wakes up tomorrow and says, you know, Patrick, you're actually a better media manager than your boss, does this change your fortunes in your view? The whole idea is, has he spoken onto the issues that are raised for me to understand his juxtaposition of me as opposed to others? So his tweets do not really move me. I just think he's the same old general. He's up to some mischief. I don't want to give attention.
Honorable Matthias Mpuuga, hold on to your point, sir, because we're going to take a break. On the spot, we'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Amara. My guest tonight is Member of Parliament representing Nyendo Mukungwe, former leader of opposition, and now the founder of the Democratic Alliance. You know, it sounds just pretty much like the TDA of the past of JPAM, of John Patrick Amama Mbabazi, which you are also very much involved, I think, by the time you were in DP. And actually, again, when we posted you, people were saying, you know what, this is just another failed venture, just like JPAM's venture, which had your endorsement. What would you tell them?
Well, during the TDA times, definitely I was alive and active. Of course, I was not one of the principals. My party leaders were. And nothing should scare Ugandans from doing what is right. Just because an attempt over yesterday has failed, we should never fail to try. It's an act of cowardice to say, I was doing something right, never worked, I'll never do it again. Unless you're saying that you never believed in what you did last time in the first place. If you had real belief in what you were trying to do, and it never worked, but you think you were doing it in good faith, with good intentions, then try it again. Which is why people are eager to participate in the next election, because they know that electing leaders is the good thing to do. But then you're saying you must do it in the right environment. So the failures of the TDA should never be an excuse for anyone not to try to do it, unless somebody out there says the TDA attempt was the wrong thing to do, and therefore should never try it again. So trying when we fail should be part of human endeavor, because humanity tries all the time and fails some of the time. But you cannot say you'll never try again. Fail to try is an act of nothing doers. If you're politically active and you think the next election offers the country an opportunity to look into a fresh direction, then look into those situations that made it improbable for the country to hold a free and fair election. Look into those issues. You see, some of the proposals I'm making were even litigated upon up to the Supreme Court, and no action has been taken upon them. It would be an act of treachery and negligence for us not to push those issues to come through as reforms, and of course many other proposals. So these proposals must be discussed according to me and others, and there should be no fear discussing them. When we fail to get some of them and you get something out of it, probably buy it progressively, a clawback on this NRM juggernaut can make changes, can make us probably make the headway that we desire to see in our electoral cycle.
If what you're proposing is looked at by the NRM as something that can actually be a threat to the hold on the on state power, you think you're going to have partners who will accept to talk to you, if anything, discuss themselves out of power?
It's never crossed my mind that every proposal that we are making would sail through, and which is why when I tabled my proposal reforms, I was able to cascade them into 3 phases, especially the constitutional amendments, because there are those that can be made by Parliament alone, Parliament and local governments, Parliament and a referendum. For example, on questions, Patrick, have you ever thought about the fact that we are probably one of the few nations from the 193 nations worldwide? We're one of the few countries without a response to citizen questions for more than 20 years. So we have had, for example, take an example of the well-documented failure of the nature of devolution we have, which is decentralization. Everyone agrees that actually it is a total failure. And we have never attempted to hold a referendum to ask citizens on how they want to be governed. And I'm making proposals that we have several questions that require a referendum for citizens. And the excuse has been, that's very expensive to hold a referendum. And I'm proposing that on polling day, we should have a ballot box for a series of referendum questions for citizens to answer. Is that so difficult for people?
You know,
and I'm saying,
some
look,
of these propositions you're making in Parliament, we have not seen anywhere something that is not endorsed and accepted by the NRM to see light of day in that house.
Patrick,
because
you cannot.
I know you could be having a good attempt, but are you really?
That's why I'm saying you cannot wish away the NRM. Love them, hate them, they are around. We must engage them. And like I said earlier, I know some actors in the NRM who are so worried about the future. And the whole idea of engaging on a few issues in this country to try and tone down on the possibility of a regime collapse. There's so many out there. But how do you get to know them unless you have opened up an engagement? I have no space for people who want to engage with the NRM for positions. That's not my take. I want an engagement with the NRM as an institution, as an entity with a stake in this country. Very true. In Parliament, they have a forest majority. You should be able to speak to them, speak to their fears, speak to their concerns, probably offer hope and promise. I believe in that. And if out there people think you'll simply dismiss them.
Because what we know, what matters in that house really, is what happens in the NRM caucus.
Yeah, very true. But,
so,
also,
but you're not part of the caucus. What the caucus decides is what the Parliament takes.
Yeah, which is why you need to engage the NRM, but also engage the citizens. This country is not about parties alone. It's not about politicians alone.
So, how
There's so many stakeholders that should be engaged.
The NRM is politically already opposed to you. Your colleagues know, people who know you best.
Why speaking generally as if you're not researched?
Listen, Honorable Mpuuga, people who know you best trust you less.
You are regurgitating.
No.
You're just regurgitating. And I disagree with you.
People who know you best trust you less. How do you expect other people who have not had an opportunity to be closer to you?
Which people are you talking about in particular? Which people, Patrick?
Your party president.
You mean he knows me that much?
By the time he picks you to be leader of opposition for 2.5 years,
and I am
at that level, by the time you are the vice president of Nup Central Region, of course he knows you.
And I'm not here to discuss what...
No, that's not the reason. The reason I'm trying to...
You're not going to ask an answer for me as well. Please listen. The Honorable Kyagulanyi knows what he knows. This conversation should never be reduced to what Honorable Kyagulanyi knows and what I know. And that's how nations have been misled by individuals wanting to occupy every space, including civic space. I'm talking about institutional conversations, not personal conversations. Do you want to understand that? So the whole idea of Honorable Kyagulanyi knowing me or not knowing me should not arise here. Is NUP about an individual? It's an institution. So do not bring me to discussing individuals. I'm not interested.
You have said people should not just look to the next election. And I'm wondering, because 2025 is here, 2026 elections are going to be held. The people of Nyendo Mukungwe are watching and listening to you tonight. Are you going back to them to ask for their mandate to represent and lead them in the next election?
Patrick, if you thought...
Are you going to ask for their mandate?
Patrick, that question should not beg a question from you. Nyendo Mukungwe is not no man's land. Nyendo Mukungwe has owners, and I know where they reside. I know their domiciles. If the question arises about my role in the next election,
you have an interest.
The first people to engage will be the people of Nyendo Mukungwe. I am interested in Nyendo Mukungwe as well as I bear interest in Fort Portal. I have an interest in Gulu, in Karamoja. I'm a Ugandan. So the conversation about Nyendo Mukungwe is a micro conversation, because if my interest arises, then I am there. I'm not a visitor in Nyendo Mukungwe. I'm a permanent resident. So
ultimately, Honorable Matthias Mpuuga, your eyes are set at the topmost job in the land, the presidency.
My eyes
intend to run at one point for the presidency of the Republic of Uganda.
Patrick, this is not a question about me. When an environment is set, one environment is facilitated for every able citizen to compete. I could be one of them. There are others, which is why I'm not preoccupied by what I'll compete for. I am more preoccupied with providing and working for an environment that is good for everybody to compete. In this kind of environment, you will never get to know our best in this space until you have worked hard to make it possible for the best to emerge. Some of the pretenders you'll see will be just grandstanding. And I never want to be a mere statistic or a footnote in a political competition.
Do you have an ambition to serve your country at a higher level, the presidency?
When an opportunity arises at the right moment, and I have the right frame of people around me, and they interest me in that, I'll be available.
What will constitute the right environment?
It begins with the environment I'm talking about. That you have a set of legislation relating to polls that everybody will respect. That at the end of the day, you'll be able to have a referee able to fairly judge this match. That you don't have some players with whistles in their pockets playing. That you have an environment where the military will never determine the electoral outcome. That freedom of association is respected and assembly. The best will emerge. When that happens, I could simply be one of them. I'm not saying I'm the best. I could be one of them.
In the electoral reforms and constitutional reforms you're proposing, you're not alone. Some people across the aisle, the Honorable Lumu, the Honorable Nwagawa, your former President General of the Democratic Party, I think also Honorable Lume, are also bringing, proposition on reforms. A bit, some of them are different, but all geared at making Uganda a better place. Have you bothered to talk to them so that you have one united force, since you seem to have to be in the same, to have the same idea of a better Uganda, of reforms, electoral and constitutional? Have you had a conversation with them?
I speak to everyone, and today afternoon in the House, I was pleasantly surprised when the Honorable Naomi Kabasharira rose on the floor to remind the Speaker that she had written to the Speaker with an intention of tabling an amendment to reduce the size of Parliament. That was for me very pleasant and surprising, but pleasantly surprising. I speak to the Honorable Lumu. I have spoken to the Honorable Lulume. We've even held meetings because he's the original proponent of the presidential transition bill. And I've encouraged him to enrich that bill and consult upon it with a view to retabling it. The Honorable Nwagaba, my very good friend and deeply knowledgeable, gentleman on matters of law, tabled these propositions in the 10th Parliament. And unfortunately, he was adjudged to have brought them late. And we never had occasion to debate his propositions. Some of the propositions I'm making, actually, I picked them from his proposals. They are not necessarily very new. And we're saying now that we have some space, sometimes, not really the kind of time we would have loved, but particularly recollect that 2 years ago, I impressed upon the opposition to try and work on these reforms when they had enough time. Unfortunately, my friends never smelled the coffee when they had enough time. Now we are in a panic environment, and inevitably it should be the conversation. So I am in contact with whoever I think has a positive spirit, but also in contact with those that I am aware of are vehemently opposed to any kind of movement. The Honorable Mao, as the Minister of Justice, of course, in his position, he bears the burden, the ultimate burden to present reforms. Unfortunately, I have not seen any of his propositions.
Whereas you seem to see Uganda in a different prism, whereby you need the reforms, you needed them yesterday, the NRM juggernaut seems to be at peace, they are buoyant, they think everything is okay, and it's going to be a Herculean task, completely difficult for you to convince them that, you know what, let's listen to my argument, because they think all is good.
So because it's going to be difficult, is your view that we do nothing? We concede? We simply look at them in admiration and say it's improbable? I don't think so. I know it's not going to be easy, but something has to be done, and we need to begin slowly, consistently, and crawl back on this you are calling a juggernaut. And as a student of human behavior, I know what can happen if we worked well, smartly. You see, it's very important to understand the spirit, to understand the concerns, the motivations, the fears of your adversary. But if you try to be blind, if you attempt to simply brush them aside, you probably will not get the opportunity to even understand what motivates them to do what they do and to stick to their rather inspired positions as far as working for this country is concerned. So I fully understand the magnitude of this challenge, but I also know that it's not insurmountable per se.
There seems to be two political dichotomy. A group of you in opposition who seem to be radical and defiant, and that's the route you have taken, and people like you who want to be persuasive and rational. If you want to be persuasive, in my view, you may not have the numbers. The militant, radical, and defiant group have the numbers, and actually, your persona has been beaten and battered by the other group. When you want to wake up and lead, you'll find it's very difficult because of what has been thrown at you. Do you put that in mind?
Well, that's why I don't put a personal mirror in front of me when I'm discussing these issues. Far from what probably the impression we may want to create here. I'm only human, and if somebody wants to make these issues personal, that's their problem. Secondly, radicalism or the lack of it, for me, it's okay. That's why I said, for you to build a durable state, you need horses and bears. And a blend of the two will give you the nature of balance you need to keep the state firm and durable. If you are radicals, you're going to build an Afghanistan. You want to build a Damascus. What do you want to build? I think we have had so many problems, and I'm very sure even the group that has kept power for 4 years does understand the very difficult situation they find themselves in, because inevitably this country will transition Are we going to cultivate a culture of revenge and retribution? I don't believe so. Even when I believe that this country is angry, people have been injured, people have been hurt, I am for justice, not revenge and retribution. So some leaders must step up, even when you have the extremists. So if you have extreme radicals, then you must also have, call them extreme modelists. So the brand of the two will have the country to speak. We cannot be a country that can hardly speak to each other. We must be able to speak to the disagreements, we must speak to the violations, we must speak to the injustices, and eventually find common ground. That's my view, and I hold it dear.
I want your political analysis on this one, because President Yoweri Museveni has been leading almost 40 years now. And of course, he could continue, but he's human. He may not continue as another 40. Of course, that is impossible in my view. But do you envisage a Uganda 10, 15 years from now that can have a peaceful transition, or we could likely go a Somalia, God forbid, a Libya, or even a Sudan way? What do you see from considering Uganda's political history, our tumultuous past, the lack of institutions today, the strongman mentality that we have? Does it scare you?
You're inviting me into apocalypse.
It looks apocalyptic.
Yeah, I mean,
Armageddon.
that's why I avoid being speculative, because and turning the country into
but you can look at it. You can actually see whether we are going to Mogadishu or a Botswana.
That's why I am avoiding turning the country into a casino where we get into gambling about the possibilities, and then go into reality, because the transition will happen. And if you want to avoid a bloody transition, then you must have a conversation as to the possibilities. I talked about a conversation about the worries of those that have caused immense suffering to the citizenry. Who will speak to them? I'm not saying it should be me. No, that's why we must invite some non-state actors. For example, if you want to have a meaningful dialogue with General Museveni, you must inevitably have it structured with a very clear agenda, with a very clear, probably respected arbiter, and a framework for implementing the framework of that, the outcome of that conversation.
I think sometime around 2020 there was an agenda to have a national dialogue. It had reached a certain level. I understand President Yoweri Museveni had accepted to have a national dialogue. Maybe it was COVID that disorganized that. And I think they had even chosen a mediator or somebody to chair that. I think it was former President Benjamin Mkapa of Tanzania. That conversation has been there.
No, there have been
civil society organizations and religious leaders.
You also know there was an attempt after the 2016 botched elections. And somehow, because on both sides the actors did not exhibit good faith, they collapsed. I was not part of that, but I'm aware of where the actors were. That's why I'm saying those were attempts that failed. We should never fail to attempt. But I insist that that kind of arrangement must be structured. But it must begin with the conversation I'm talking about, of understanding the matters, the issues that arise, the seamers that filter through this fractured nation, such that we can have a fair understanding of how we can handle
this fractured nation and today's political environment. Honorable Mpuuga, does it give you optimism?
I am never a pessimist. Pessimists are never going to make progress. And how do you exhibit pessimism about a nation that you call home? The only motivation that should drive you to wake up to work for this country is because you know tomorrow is going to be better. And for me, that drives me. And understanding that our history is a checkered political history, we can only be better if our children will not brand us hopeless, as having failed to speak to each other because we disagree. We shall never be branded serious people. Nations that have emerged from these challenges, we have examples. And Patrick, I see so many Ugandans, political actors, both from the opposition and ruling party, trek to one country called Ghana. They go there routinely in the name of benchmarking. I do not know whether they go there, whether they simply descend in markets to buy bitenge, or they actually get an understanding of how Ghana evolved from a military tyrant to now an admirable democracy that just changed power last week, but 2 weeks ago, and the ruling party conceded. What was the kind of framework? What was the kind of arrangement? I think we need to learn how these things have happened across the kind of nation that mirror our history. Zambia, Malawi. We can pick a few things. Because we are wounded, we have failed to understand what the best we can do, and because when we discuss politics as political leaders, we put a personal mirror in front of us that anything we do, we must equally be beneficiaries. Some of the decisions we must take, we may not actually be direct beneficiaries.
Now, just talking about mirrors, if our leaders put the mirrors before themselves, the mirrors to show what they have done, to show their footsteps, are they not scared of themselves?
That scare should be addressed because they are human beings. And for a group to hold the power for that long, inevitably in the kind of environment, some of them came so hungry and angry, they grabbed whatever they would grab without recourse to what history would be like. So you need to address these and see how you're going to remedy, how you're going to repair the damage without necessarily killing the possibilities for our children and grandchildren. You know, some of these frictions will require delicate but deliberate repair with a fair understanding of where we have come from. Otherwise, the alternative will be to go for revenge and retribution, where that will take us as people interested in building a constitutional order is a matter that every citizen should reflect upon. It does not mean that you want that because you have forgotten or because you're a conformist. Far from the truth. Because where nations have failed to talk to each other, it's been bloodshed. Do we have a memory of what happened in our neighbors in Kenya after a long reign of President Moi that was laden with violations and corruption and all manner of vices? Are we alive to how they handled the migration from his juggernaut to the point where Kanu is no more? Are we alive?
But the beautiful about it is that when he was out of power, he still lived in Nairobi.
No, that's the point. So, I mean, is it that we desire to see General Museveni and his people out of Kampala and then the country will be at peace? Is that what you're working for? If that's the solution, then let's work for it. Let's not simply talk about it. Are we working for that? Would you want to see? You'd want to see a Uganda moving on with General Yoweri Museveni retired in Rwakatura and business going on as normal. Somebody in the State House in Tebe is also doing his work there. That is the Uganda you want to see. That's a better way of building enduring states. His retirement is long overdue. He is past his sell-by date. His presence at the top of the nation remains divisive and toxic. That's why it must be immediately addressed. How are you going to address that when there's less civic competence, when there's no vibrancy in the citizenry? How do you intend to build it? Because I think if Ugandans can engage, if Ugandans have a higher civic competence, that would be the game changer. It is a huge concern, Patrick, and I know if you went out there and interviewed your contemporaries and asked them to go and pick a ticket to participate in politics, they'll tell you, no, I don't want to be insulted, I don't want to be abused. People have been abused and laid bare, I don't want to be part of that. And that kind of situation... Because you have made the politics so toxic. It's so toxic. That's why it's very important that we arouse the interest of all stakeholders in how this country is governed. It's very important. Selfishly, we may undertake actions that deter and cause disinterest, but remains the interest of common good that the citizens are interested. And for us at the DA, that is part of our agenda. And I'll tell you, God giving us a good day, next year is on the cards for us to go and interact with the citizens, wherever they are, in their different small closets and communities to best understand, because nobody is listening to the people. When the regime promised to put up a constitutional review commission, it's now 10 years. They have never done that. So who is listening to the concerns of the citizens on various issues of governance, on what has failed? So citizen engagement is a must. We want to do our bit, and nobody should be out there to say that, you know, we are appropriating all this onto ourselves. No, we are going to go and do our part, and we're inviting everyone to play their part.
Honorable,
the collective.
Honorable Mpuuga, hold on to your point, because we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back with our last 10 minutes of our discussion. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Amara. My guest tonight is Honorable Mpuuga, Member of Parliament representing Nyendo Mukungwe, and also a former leader of opposition. But are you still Commissioner of Parliament? The last time I checked, the halbal was too much. I'm like, you know, so much has happened in the last 1 year.
Yeah.
You've been the talk of the nation. I don't know whether...
Have you ever thought why?
No, I'm only amazed by the tough skin that you have.
No,
because if you are weakling, but now you'd be down under.
And that's because I believe
everything has been thrown at you, including the kitchen thing.
I believe in the goodness
and there
of
is
man.
And there's this image of you and President Yoweri Museveni that has been merged. So I look at it, I don't know whether it is Mpuuga or it is Kaguta, and they've even created a name called
Those are weak people.
Mpuuga.
Those are weak people. And I'm used to being in spaces where people are weak to raise any serious issues, but person.
So all these things, all these caricatures, all this kind of talk, how was that? You know, you're human. I mean, you have a family of people who love you. You have children. And, I mean, this must have taken a toll on your family.
Invaluably, yes. My children have grown up. They watch TV. They read newspapers. I have a family. I'm a family man. The beauty is they're very understanding. I sit with them. We discuss what has arisen. And they also know, the beauty is that they know the individual characters behind character assassinating me. And some of them are people they have known as friends. And for them, that is most disturbing. Some of them are people they know I have personally helped to be what they are. And they know that for a fact. Some of them are people I have fed. Some I have educated. And they know that. And you see, when I talk to them, I counsel them to understand the nature of human beings and to also best understand how to relate with people. And for me, my family is my first motivation.
You see, you could be prepared for this. You are ready for this negativity.
Yeah.
But for them, it's a different
No
ballgame.
doubt, Patrick, it takes a toll on them. It takes a toll on them. One day, my wife saw a friend insult me and abuse me on TV. But she also knew this is the friend. I would beg her to leave her car and use the border so that this friend can ride it to go and have a campaign. She was really broken. But I told her, please do not give up on people. So many people are good. And when we speak about this openly, it heals the family and we carry on.
Are you a stronger man now than before, more determined, more resilient, more focused, because you've gone through a blast furnace?
Patrick, for you to be able to get to the true operation, you must withstand the shocks of adversity. If you're not able to, then how are you able to strengthen the others around you? I have a duty to keep those around me.
To absorb that kind of shock, you really have to have very tough shock absorbers.
Because you have belief, you have faith. You remember when I was organizing a Thanksgiving in Masaka?
Yes. To which I had an invitation.
Yes, a leader in the opposition who calls himself a pastor and born again, had the audacity of getting on TV to say, do not go to that Thanksgiving, that man is a thief. Then I asked him at some platform, so you man, I'm a thief, and you're not taking me to court, and could you be probably in conspiracy with me? You here lamenting about something you do not know? So I have known people, but it calms me down because I know who is doing what. And lately, it's a consortium of people from various platforms that worry about anything about me. So the fear of me will not make them better. I want to advise them.
So you seem to be suggesting that all this has happened because some people are scared of you?
And of course, partly yes, but also some people are not simply strong to be themselves. They bear no skin. So that's just their survival. When people go in the survival rank, they lose character. And if you're a man and you have no character and you are into survival, then less of you can be reasonable. So a reasonable man has a limit. If you're not reasonable, then...
Honorable Matthias Mpuuga, this service award, for heaven's sake, look like a poisoned chalice on your political career. Do you at one point said, maybe I shouldn't have gotten this, look where it has taken me?
Did you see the list of people, leaders in parliament and former leaders that were on that list? Did you see it? I'm sure you took time to see it. Do you have ever asked yourself why Mpuuga was singled out? You saw political leaders in the opposition compose poems out of me, sing, talk about mad funerals. Have you ever heard them sing about the people that caused disappearance of our people, caused the murders? You think they're genuine? You think they're reasonable? I am a lawyer. I am a leader. I'm extremely careful with my actions. If I had known that was wrong, I would have retreated. But for you to hold me on to something legally, officially offered, and you want to use it against me, and I know it's right, then you're going to even make me drop my clothes because you are shouting at me. So I think there's a limit to which you can say this is bad, and I know the difference between bad and good. At least I have capacity to do judgment. At least I have never lost my sense of judgment, and I carry it with me. Where I make a mistake, I am so fast to say I am wrong. I was never wrong. The trolling is from people who have other intentions. Otherwise, if you are going to follow them to their actions, you'll be shocked as to what is in their closet. But that is never my preoccupation. I prefer to go higher.
Do you sometimes walk with a sense of disappointment to say, look, why this negativity yet I've given my all?
I'm a human. To feel a sense of disappointment, especially with particular individuals that at one time I thought have a better understanding of the journey we have trekked treacherously together for a long time, and then at some stage felt envious about the small things. Mpuuga is a lope, I should have been the lope. Why is he a commissioner? I should have been the one. So at the end of the day, I do not know how much that has added to their weight and clout, but it's part of humanity. When you go through it, then you understand how to work with people. But Patrick, my political experience, my background, my training, my work in different spaces has brought me in contact with so many people. And that informs my demeanor when I have a challenge. So I have not met a big shock. There are simply surprises along the way, and I move on.
Money is such a big factor in the elections in Uganda, and the people are poor, that's for sure. And sometimes just a 2,000 or 1,000 or 3,000 people can sell their soul because of that. What can we do so that purely people are elected on merit, not necessarily because you have provided the grocery?
That's a journey we must trek with everyone, and you are not going to leave that to politicians. That's a journey for every citizen, which is why it's important to build the civic competence of citizens, to get to understand the criticality of the leaders that we choose over time, and that groceries will never give you the leaders you deserve. We say societies are mirrored by their leaders, but we must understand that our societies, because of our history, have been disfigured, that are being made poor. They're not supposed to be poor, and therefore their outlook is should not be their natural outlook. And therefore, building a civically competent society is only part of the remedy that we need to use to try and bring the best. and of course, now the avalanche of social media is bound to even worsen it, because social media, properly or wrongly used, they can actually sell to you a bluff of a leader. So when people are able to question character, competence, background of their leaders, then they are able to do that.
Your adversaries and your tormentors have pushed you almost up to the gates of hell. But even though you still carry yourself with the head high, it's amazing how you actually even remain sane, composed, calm, cool, and collected.
It's because I come from a society of people who are reasonable. When I'm in Masaka, I am with people who understand me, and they give me the spring to stand on and do what I do. And because I have been part of that community, born and raised in that community, the understanding of issues is different probably from so many other communities. And from there, together with my family background, I am able to withstand shocks of adversity. You cannot be defined as a leader in these spaces by simply being feeble. It never will make you one, because all attempts are made to impeach you, either character-wise or political or otherwise, and therefore you must have the shock absorbers to be able to stand and defend your territory. Some of these, attempts are to impeach territory and person, and therefore you must understand the Masaka community I have served diligently understands me and how I have shaped their outlook and shaped the appreciation of national politics, understands me as their son. And when I make mistakes, they're first to call me and say, Matthias, that's a mistake. And they will never allow anybody to judge me, because society is prejudicial. So,
what do you see Democratic Alliance turning into in the next couple of months or years?
The DA will remain a civic platform because it's composed of individuals and groups from different political persuasions and parties. What I said at the launch is that individuals that do not belong to registered platforms but are part of DA are desirous of forming fresh political platforms, and I'll be one of them.
I want to thank you so much, Honorable Matthias Mpuuga, for the time you've given us, for your submission, for your resilience, for having been able to stay focused amidst all that has come. To weather the storm is not a very easy thing. I've known you as a man with the gift of the gab. You have a gifted mind, but more so, you also know how to express that mind. What's going to be your concluding remark?
Well, first of all, Patrick, thank you for having me, and thank all citizens out there that have made their time to understand the issues behind the headlines. It's very important. Secondly, to invite everybody to pay attention, because it's about us. It's about our children and grandchildren. It's about posterity. It's not about the actors now. We are on occupying a stage. We shall soon another data take leave, but we must leave behind a bequest worth transferring to generations.
Honorable Matthias Mpuuga, former leader of opposition, member of parliament for Nyendo constituency, thank you so much for having been on the show tonight.
Thank you, Patrick, for having me.
One thing I've learned tonight is that Honorable Matthias Mpuuga and those who do not believe in his brand of politics I don't think they hate each other. They don't. I think they disagree because they love Uganda more. Sometimes we think they are enemies. But as we go to a new year, 2025, maybe Uganda, let us be more hopeful. We only have one country we can call home. We can decide either to build it or to destroy it. But I beseech you, Ugandans, let's choose to build Uganda. Good night and God bless Uganda.